What's up, y'all? You're listening to another episode of the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller with the Eagle here in College Station, joined always by Travis Brown, A&M sports writer for the Eagle. Travis is not in College Station, though. Travis, where the heck are you today?
I'm out here in Stanford, California, out on the campus of Stanford. Behind me is Klein Field at the Sunken Diamond, which Klein Field at Sunken Diamond is such a cool ballpark name. But we're here for the Stanford Regional. Texas A&M is here in the NCAA tournament. They'll play Cal State Fullerton tomorrow it's 7 p.m. our time, but it'll be 9 p.m. in Central. And then also Stanford and San Jose State. They've been out here practicing today at the Sunken Diamond. And let me tell you, I'm wearing a vest. The weather is beautiful out here.
Okay, two questions. First of all, what is the temperature there actually?
I believe the high was in the high 60s. The low tonight is going to be in the 50s. So, and we're in June.
You.
This is actually still June.
And okay, so you say Sunken Diamond. So when you say Sunken Diamond, is it like down in the ground, like they dig a hole and put a baseball field in there?
Yeah, no, I don't really know, because I mean, you see here, if you can see it, it says the Stanford Sunken Diamond. No, I mean, the diamond is it might be a little bit below ground level, like just a little bit, but it's you walk in. Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess it is a little bit below ground level. Now you think about it, because you walk in and you're, for the most part, at ground level is about the height of the dugouts, the top of the dugout. So the amount of top to the dugouts to the ground floor is how much it's sunk.
Well, I'm glad that was an easier mystery to solve than where the bottom trophy is. Anyway, let's talk some baseball. Travis, A&M, they're playing Cal State Fullerton tomorrow night. You've got three West Coast schools, totally different style of ball, but A&M's coming in. They're coming off a really hot week where the pitching just out of nowhere has found its identity, especially from the left side.
Yeah, we talked to Troy Wansing, talked to Jim Schlossnagle today. Jim Schlossnagle liked to hype up the fact that Troy Wansing got that one bullpen relief work at the very end of the last game of the season at Mississippi State, and everything kind of turned around from there. And he said just that approach from being back in the bullpen is what kind of switched things around for him. You go out there when you're in the bullpen, all you really know is you might have an inning. And so you give everything you got in that inning. You don't hold anything back. You're not trying to hold back a breaking pitch or a fastball or give guys different looks like you might as a starter, or you think you might need to as a starter. He went out there and just threw pitches well, and then brought that over into the starting game and was not really looking past the inning that he was in, just trying to get the guy out in front of him. And he threw a one-hitter in the SEC tournament, and he said that that's also contagious. You saw some of those other A&M pitchers follow suit and have a really good performance. So, I think was kind of the key. And they all said that they believe that can carry over into play this weekend.
These are three teams that A&M is probably not very familiar with. Obviously, a lot of pedigree, especially between Stanford and Cal State Fullerton, of course. Travis, A&M, of course, they're gonna start tomorrow off against the Titans. Can you just kind of give us a little scouting report on what Aggies can expect to see from that Cal State Fullerton squad?
Baseball. It's get guys on, get them over, do whatever you can to get those guys over. Probably aren't going to have huge power numbers, but they're going to try to generate offense in other ways. And so Jim Schlossnagle said they've got to be solid on defense and they got to be solid throwing strikes, because you can't give them free passes and walks. I mean, that's something that's played A&M in the SEC, but the difference in the SEC is if they got guys on, those guys might get around via home run. In these games, it's if you get that leadoff runner on, they're going to lay down a bunt, move him over, do a hit and run to the right side to get him moving towards home, generate offense like that quickly. Maybe not as much base stealing, but think Louisiana Lafayette last year in the Bluebonnet or the Bluebell Park Regional, the College Station Regional last year. That when Louisiana they're going to just try to generate offense however they can. Not power arms, but guys who can throw strikes. And it should be said, this is a field that Cal State Fullerton comes and plays at just about every year. They know this area, they know this terrain, they know these temperatures. So it'll be more familiar confines for them than it will the Aggies for sure.
Stanford, of course, the favorite. They're the regional host, the number 8 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, winners of the Pac-12 regular season. This has just kind of become normal for them. I mean, this is their 5th, 6th year hosting, and they've been to the College World Series the last 2 years. I mean, what makes this Stanford team so good this year, Travis?
They play. I mean, it's kind of a carryover from what they were able to do last year in Omaha, and it's a team that coaches, and if you just watch it, it looks like an SEC team. They've got power bats and power arms. They hit a lot of home runs, and they throw a lot of strikeouts. Cal State Fullerton actually has the best pitching numbers when it comes to walks per strikeouts and walks per nine innings pitched and ERA. Cal State Fullerton leads the regional in those numbers. Stanford, however, leads the regional in strikeouts, and they lead the regional in power numbers, slugging, home runs, things like that. So if A&M moves on and does face a Stanford, that's going to feel a lot like one of these SEC teams that they've played through the regular season and through the SEC tournament. But, as they talked about, they're not going to see there's good pitchers at this regional, but they're not going to see that constant one after another like they did at the SEC tournament of, big league level arms going in and out of the lineup and in and out of the bullpen. And so they will have an opportunity, they hope, to jump on some guys because it's not going to be that steady flow like in the SEC tournament.
Well, Travis, here's the question everybody wants to know. How far do you think A&M can go in this regional, and what's it going to take for A&M to have some success this weekend?
Well, it goes back to the starting pitching, just like it did in the SEC tournament. I said when we kind of previewed that and talked about that I didn't think they were going to last in the SEC tournament because they didn't. I didn't believe they had the starting pitching to be able to do that. Well, they proved over and over again that the starting pitching has seemed to arrive. You had Troy Wansing with the one-hitter shutout. You had Justin Lampkin with a one-hit shutout. You had Will Johnson going out there and getting a quality start when he was there. Nathan Detmer was the only one actually who was kind of behind a little bit on some of those numbers. But it goes back to the starting pitching. Justin Lampkin or Will Johnson. Probably Will Johnson's going to get the nod tomorrow against Cal State Fullerton. They might save Nathan Detmer for Stanford tomorrow or a loser's game bracket. But the good news for A&M is when you went into the SEC tournament thinking you didn't have enough pitching to make it through tournament, that was 7 games in 9 days. I think if you go back to include the Mississippi State series a couple days before that, I mean, this is going to be at the most 5 games in 4 days, 3 days or 4 days. They showed they have the pitching that they could do that. So you got to get the quality starts and then keep up with the timely hitting. The interesting thing that we asked both Schlossnagle and Cal State Fullerton's head coaches, a lot of people have said this ballpark plays differently during the day than at nighttime. Those temperatures, right now it's toasty. I mean, one of the reasons why Alex is actually mad at me on the other side is it took me forever to get on this Zoom call because my hotspot got too hot sitting out here and overheated. So it feels warm out here right now, and usually warm weather makes the ball fly a little bit farther, but it's going to drop into the 50s and you're going to need to get your jackets out and they're going to put their arm sleeves on. That stifles the balls traveling a little bit. I think that might favor A&M a little bit because they have the night game tomorrow, help their pitchers all out a little bit, and they can still hit the ball. They're not just solely dependent on the home run to generate offense. And I think that the night game suits them a little bit better. So that's another factor to watch in the series as well.
You mentioned that too. And something that I seemed to notice last week, just watching them in the SEC tournament, they got back to what some of their mojo was last year really hard. And that was just finding ways on base, getting pitch counts up in their at bats and just finding ways to get on base, whether it was a 5 or 6 pitch walk, a base hit, something. I mean, that's just something that I noticed last week. And I mean, if that's might be what it takes to manufacture a key run here or there in a ballpark that, like you said, might play a little different at night.
You go back to that championship game against Vanderbilt and really the whole season, to be honest. A&M was not afraid to steal bases. Jace Laviolette, one of the biggest guys on the team, the biggest power hitter on the team, I believe he's 2 stolen bases away from a 20 stolen base season. So they are not afraid to run on the base pass. I think you'll see a lot of that out here in these games because, you know, if it's the night game and if they feel like that the power isn't necessarily going to be there with the way that the atmosphere is playing, they're going to be looking to generate some runs too. Now, of course, we know with Jim Schlossnagle, he's allergic to the bunts. They're not going to be laying down bunts, but they do some other situational things with hit and runs and situational hitting. They have some great situational hitters, and I know it's something they work on every time in the batting cages during batting practice. But a lot of guys doing a really good job pushing the ball the other way, especially those right-handed hitters. Going to generate some offense by getting some guys moving. So I think that's definitely something to watch. A team that entered the conference tournament leading the SEC in stolen bases.
Well, Travis, you got any fun little tidbits or stories from your short time that you've been out there today?
I mean, something we've talked about in our previews. You got a couple of players, and Hunter Haas, Jack Moss, who were both at Arizona State, coming back into the Pac-12 region to play again. The funny thing is, both of those guys, I believe, said they were hurt. I know Hunter Haas was hurt. They never actually got to play here. They've been around here, but they haven't gotten to play in this ballpark. But Jack Moss said he's played with a lot of the Stanford guys in the high school time growing up. He knows some of those guys. And then you have Michael Early and Nate Yeske, who both, Nate Yeske was a longtime pitching coach at Oregon State, just up the road from here, which I actually, we need to clarify, and I know that this isn't the Pacific Northwest, contrary to what I tweeted. This is actually NorCal. The Pacific
Bay
Northwest
Area, Travis.
The Bay Area. Well, it's NorCal too. That's bigger region, but up at Oregon State in the Pacific Northwest is where Nate Yeske was the longtime pitching coach, and then went down to Arizona State, in the Arizona, and then Michael Early came over from Arizona as well. So those guys know some Pac-12 ball, know how ball is played over here, and a little bit of kind of a homecoming for them. Trying to think, a couple, looking at the rosters, there's a kid from Arlington on Stanford's roster, and a kid from Frisco on San Jose State's. They're freshmen. The Stanford kid hasn't really played this year. San Jose State is a catcher. He's been a little bit of a role player, so a little Texas flavor to this. But it's something that they've talked about pretty regularly. The fact that this is the only West Coast regional. I mean, it's the first time since 2013 that there hasn't been a Texas regional in the state of Texas, where normally an A&M would go to participate. And not only that, but it's the furthest one west. Stillwater is the next closest one. And so when people get done with watching their regionals out east, they're going to tune in, and this is going to be the only thing going. So there's going to be a lot of eyeballs, and it's a regional with a lot of pedigree. Cal State Fullerton, 4 national titles. Stanford has 2. There's between Stanford A&M, Cal State Fullerton's 40-something College World Series appearances. This is a blue blood regional, and it's going to be fun to see. It's programs that aren't necessarily averse to this kind of spotlight, and who can make the most of that. It's going to be really fun to watch.
Well, Travis, I want to throw you a little curveball real quick, because I know you've been going.
I wasn't really great at hitting the curveball, let's be honest.
Well,
I was kind of a dead red pull hitter, so we'll see how this goes.
Well, in case you were wondering, on the other coast today, the SEC announced that in 2024, they're going to be playing 8 games in the football schedule, at least for one more year, possibly a couple more. The future schedule beyond 24 is still to be determined. I guess, just what are your thoughts on that? And every indication leading up to last week was that the SEC was actually finally going to move to 9 games, going to this 16-team conference. And now all of a sudden, they've kind of paused and they're going to take at least another extra year before they consider doing that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the quotes and comments that are coming out from Destin, where the SEC meetings are happening, there seems to be a pretty strong divide against the schools that have traditionally been pretty successful and the ones that sometimes have been having to fight for a bowl eligibility. And adding that extra SEC game is another way to make it harder to get to bowl eligibility. And it seems like there's a healthy amount of people who are more worried about that and what it looks like to make the college football playoff. It's an interesting thing because you say that a lot of people want to say that money drives everything, but the money making opportunity here would be to add another SEC football game because that's another home game that will draw a crowd at least every other year or so, and bring in the big bucks. It has to eventually get to 9 games. I know the first year is going to be 8 games was the announcement, but they are going to try to preserve most of the natural rivalry. So you will see Texas and Texas A&M playing in that 2024 season, even if LSU or one of these other schools is A&M's one permanent rival per se. But moving past that, you got to think that they're going to move to 9. Another thing this does do is that 2024 season will be the first in the 12-team playoff. And there's probably some of these ADs and presidents that want to get some of those data points about how the committee puts at-large bids into a 12-team playoff. And if strength of schedule, an extra conference data point is all going to matter that much or not. I can see where they're coming from, but it does seem like all roads here are eventually going to end at 9 games because let's be real, it's the money that drives everything. And there's more money to be made with a 9-game schedule than an 8-game schedule. I don't see how it doesn't arrive there. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm personally a little surprised that they didn't just go ahead and do it. The reasons that have been outlined by some of the really good reporters like Ross Dellinger and some of these others, guys from The Athletic. I mean, I understand why they're not doing it yet, but it's still kind of silly. I mean, why would you not? Why would you not want A&M versus Tennessee over A&M versus like an Abilene Christian? Like that's just a no-brainer to me. Something I'm curious about though, Travis, is that in 2024, Georgia was already supposed to make its long-awaited trip to Kyle Field. I'm curious if that's still going to be on the books or not.
You would think that some of those things would still come in line when they look at that schedule because it is going to be an 8-game schedule, but they're not even really going to – it's not going to be that 8-1 permanent because permanent means that there's like an annual reoccurrence of that. So it's going to just be a individually crafted schedule that year. The other thing that's come out of there, too, is that a lot of these coaches and ADs want to deflect away from the scheduling thing, saying that there is issues that are more pressing. And one of those issues is, NIL and how NIL is going in the SEC. The thing that's fascinated me out of these, even more so than necessarily the schedule in 2024, is the fact that Greg Sankey has come out and said, and it's something he talked about at Media Days last year, but it seemed a little bit further off than maybe the conversation is now. And that is, if there isn't going to be any federal legislation for NIL that governs the entire country, the SEC is going to look to try to standardize NIL laws within all the states that the SEC footprint is in. Now, that's challenging because the new NIL bill in the state of Texas that's on the governor's desk right now to be signed has a clause at the beginning of it that says anything that an outside organization governing body, i.e. the NCAA, and most people said this was pointing at the NCAA to say, NCAA, you can't come in here and tell us what to do. But the way that the bill is laid out, it also applies to the SEC, that if the SEC wants to come in and say, okay, all of our SEC school states, you're going to follow these NCAA guidelines. Right now, the Texas state law says the SEC can't do that. Texas can say, we don't care. We have this. You can't tell us to violate our own laws that are on the books. So it's going to be interesting to see if these states are willing to hand over the rights that they have to basically make NIL whatever it is in each individual state. and unify into one. The coaches say they want that, but right now the coaches, the ADs, if they are in the ears of their current state legislatures, they have the power to make NIL basically whatever they want. So it'll be interesting to see if all the talk that these coaches have about wanting to have guardrails, wanting everything to be standardized, if that is really true, or if they would rather have the control, because these state legislatures obviously are willing to go about doing exactly what the coaches, the ADs want. So it's going to be an interesting balance and see where that if that comes to fruition.
Well, in case in point, A&M's been at the forefront of really walking alongside a lot of those legislatures and kind of seeing where that NIL legislation goes within the state of Texas throughout this legislative session this spring.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to keep and follow along.
All right, Travis. Well, I think you still got some more work to do, so we'll let you get back to it. But how can people follow your work, of course, while you're out there in the Bay Area, NorCal?
Yeah, we need to check theeagle.com, the Eagle app. Download the Eagle app if you haven't gotten that, and follow along there. We'll have some sights and sounds video from today, a little bit of a preview of the regional heading into tomorrow, and lots of good video content moving forward.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the My Aggie Nation podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe, of course, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We'll see you next time.